All right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. Pretty sure a few more participants will be joining us soon, but let's get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, Coalition of Georgia and Pickles and Ice Cream Georgia, Personal Stories Project, A Mommy Story. Your hosts for tonight will be myself, Kim Roberts, the Maternal Mental Health Education and Development Coordinator, alongside Tamaya Daniel, the Educational Content Specialist for the Maternal Mental Health Program here at Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, Coalition of Georgia. For this two-part series, we have collaborated with 4 wonderful community moms to share their real, unfiltered stories of the challenges and difficulties they faced during their pregnancy and postpartum period. During part 2, they will delve into how they were able to survive unimaginable circumstances. Just a little bit of information about Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, Coalition of Georgia. Since 1974, we have been the strongest statewide voice for improved access to healthcare and health outcomes for Georgia's mothers and babies. HMHB-GA is the only organization in Georgia that focuses on the full spectrum of maternal and child health concerns, from prematurity to maternal mortality. HMHB has 3 main pillars of operation: access to vital resources, advocacy, and education. In our presentation tonight, our pillar focus will be education and awareness, which is highlighted through our parent-facing platform, Pickles and Ice Cream Georgia. And now, without further ado, I will introduce our panel for the evening. Next slide, Tamaya. First up, we have Simbi Anamashan. Simbi is a proud mother of 3 rainbow babies, a Black maternal health advocate, a published author, educator, and founder of United by Loss Foundation Incorporated. In 2021, she published a memoir, The Power of Healing, a memoir of loss and victory, which she documents her struggle with pregnancy loss, her journey to motherhood, the process of healing, and how she turned her pain into power. Next, we will have Teresa Wright Johnson. Teresa is a certified parent educator, certified parent peer specialist, certified mental health instructor, and mother of 6 in various ways, including an angel baby mom and a blended family mom. Her nonprofit organization is Zaria's Song, inspired by her daughter to support parents of children who experience various special needs and parents dealing with the loss of a child. Following Teresa, we will have Nancy V. Brown. Nancy is a suicide and sexual child abuse survivor. She went through the foster care system, was a teen mom, and a high school dropout who is now pursuing her doctoral degree. She is an author, healing coach, and founder of a nonprofit named Brave Girls Rise Up. Her personal experience, self-healing, and heart for healing others led her to start her podcast, My Hummingbird Sings, where she shares testimonies, spiritual healing, and education and stories of hope. And our last presenter for the evening will be Andrea Waterstone. Andrea is a maternal mental health advocate, community-based artist, visual arts teacher, yogi, and seasoned facilitator. Yet, Andrea is most importantly a mother, wife, and curator of space to nurture the growth of her son, her family, herself, and her community. Her nonprofit organization, The Mother's Creative, is a community that transforms a mother's vulnerability into acts of bravery and songs of resilience, using art as the great unifier. We are truly appreciative for our panel members' willingness to share their stories with members of our community and reassuring others that they are not alone. Now onto our stories, but first, please note our question and answer session will be held at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to drop any questions in the chat box, and they will be answered accordingly. All right, Simbi, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Kim. And first, let me apologize. You may hear my youngest son in the background crying a little bit, so I'll go check on him a little bit later. But for today, as Kim has mentioned, I published a book called The Power of Healing, a memoir of loss and victory. So I just want to kind of touch base on why I even wrote that book and what my story is, which is before I gave birth to my 3 beautiful kids, I experienced perinatal loss. So on January 1st, 2014, which was New Year's Day, I found out I was pregnant, and that was actually my first pregnancy. I was 30 years old. I had already graduated with my master's degree. I was working for about 5-6 years already as a middle school English teacher, and everything was going great in my life. And the only thing that was missing was my family. So to find out I was pregnant on New Year's Day was just like the highlight of my life. I had prayed about being a mom and just being a better parent than I had growing up. A couple days later, before I even had the opportunity to go to my doctor to, get an ultrasound and, just let her know that I found out I was pregnant because I took an at-home pregnancy test, I started spotting a little bit and had a few cramps. And so from there, I was worried. But again, at that point, just being 30, first pregnancy, I was really uneducated about pregnancy, about perinatal loss, anything in that nature. So what I did was I immediately contacted my OB, and I let her know that I found out I was pregnant and I wanted to come in to just check the status of the baby and see what was going on. So maybe she got me in maybe like the following week, which was a Monday, and I was still spotting. So when I had my, my first appointment, she, of course, let me know, I need to take some blood. I need to, really verify that you're pregnant. So she took the blood work, she took urine samples and everything else just to confirm the pregnancy. So I was indeed pregnant. And the next step was to, conduct the ultrasound. And again, I was spotting. So it was really uncomfortable when she actually went to do the ultrasound. And she let me know, okay, I'm not hearing a heartbeat, but it's so early, in your pregnancy, and we're going to give it a couple more weeks just to see, if we actually can hear the heartbeat. So again, at 30, uneducated, not really been familiar with being pregnant, I'm like, okay, so the spotting, the cramping, is there an explanation for that? And she told me it was normal. She told me that's what happens, when women are pregnant, they may spot here and there, or they may have some cramping, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything is wrong. So her being the expert, I trusted her. And I left still uncertain and still feeling uncomfortable, like this is normal. So I just, kind of let it go. Still continued to spot days later. And being a teacher, at that time at 30, I think I had been, like I said before, I had been teaching 4 or 5 years already. So it was really stressful. And that particular year, I was teaching 8th grade. And here in Georgia, they took the writing test. So it was so much pressure on teachers to get our students prepared for the writing test. And they put me in charge of tutoring the kids that were, below grade level. So again, all this different stress. And, I even forgot that I was cramping and spotting until the following week. And I believe that was around, and I can remember it was around Martin Luther King Day. I was in front of my class, teaching my students about essays. You always remember things that, that's tragic. So I was teaching them about essays, the proper way to write an essay, 5 paragraphs, And all of a sudden I just started feeling something, you know, running down my leg. And I'm just confused. My kids, of course, they're looking at me and, you know, they're really in tune and me trying to teach them the essays. So I try not to cause a scene. I'm sitting on my stool and I started cramping really badly. So I kind of looked down, you know, at my feet, just, you know, just to take the pretty much my students were watching me. So I didn't want them to focus too much on what I had going on. So I just kind of looked down. And when I looked down on the ground, I saw blood. And immediately I'm just kind of frantic. I'm like, okay, why am I seeing blood? And I run out my classroom, like dashed out my classroom, because I knew that wasn't, you know, that wasn't normal. And as I'm running to the bathroom, I'm seeing drops of blood on the floor. So once I get to the bathroom, I'm able to see that, you know, my whole pants, my panties, everything was soaked in blood. And oh my God, it was probably the worst experience during that time, because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what I was suffering, and I ended up driving myself to the emergency room. I didn't even let my principal or even I didn't go back to my classroom. I didn't let anyone know what was going on. I just kind of rushed to the nearest emergency room. So I drove myself there. They checked me in, and of course they had to do all these different preliminary tests and ask all these different questions while I'm sitting there soaked in blood. And I'm letting her know, okay, I'm seeing her soaked in blood. Like, can you allow me to see someone immediately? So maybe 5-10 minutes later, they take me to a room and do an ultrasound, a bloody ultrasound at that. Again, no heartbeat. Well, we're not hearing a heartbeat. How many weeks did you say you were? And at that point, I didn't really know how many weeks I were, because my OB or my doctor didn't really let me know how many weeks I was. So I really didn't have an answer. I'm like, I really don't even know, but I do know that I'm pregnant. So from there, they took me to another room, and another doctor, a male doctor, came in, and he hands me a brochure. I'm like, okay. I look at the brochure and it says miscarriage. And I'm like, so have I had a miscarriage? Is that what you're saying? That I've had a miscarriage? Yeah, you had a miscarriage, and, you know, I want to give you some paperwork so that you can decide what you want to do next. So no empathy, no support from the female nurses that was there. It was just kind of, okay, what's next? Okay, we can do the D&C, or you can go home and, you know, and wait for it, you know, the fetus to, you know, I guess be released on its own. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm looking confused. Like, I don't know what a miscarriage is. I've never been through this before. Can someone provide a little bit more information? Like, what's a D&C? And so they from there, they just giving me information to rush me out of there. D&C is probably the best option for you right now. So I ended up doing the D&C there still there alone, not really having anyone to call, no family, really no friends to call. And I have the D&C, which is, you know, the surgical procedure they do to remove, you know, scrape your uterus and remove the fetus. And they brought me the fetus in a jar. Like, they showed me the fetus in a jar. Unbelievable. It was really unbelievable. I'm like, I just, you know, just confused. You know, you just kind of like, you laying there and you're like, okay, that's the baby. Okay. So they discharged me maybe like an hour later. And I'm home, not really processing what I had just been through. And again, that was my first miscarriage that I experienced. And from there, that following year, I found out I was pregnant again, maybe like 6 months later, maybe 7 months later. And this was in November 2014. So I found out I was pregnant again. And again, at this point, I know what a miscarriage is. I've done my research, and I'm just trying to prevent whatever I can. So I found out I was pregnant again. But then I had a brain hemorrhage, which is a stroke. Yeah. So from there, And that's a whole nother story. But from there, I found I was pregnant that same night, and the doctors at the emergency releasing me, not because I had a stroke, but because I was pregnant. Weeks later, found out it was no heartbeat again. And the next 2 years, I experienced 2 more pregnancy losses. And, again, it's just tragic, not being educated and not having, really much of a support system. And it's so much that's offered today that wasn't offered to me back then. So that's my story. And that's how I began my journey of motherhood.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy V. Brown. I'm an author. I wrote a book called My Costa Rican Hummingbird Sings, Breaking the Bondage and Answering the Call. And I also have a podcast that's getting started, actually. And it's called My Hummingbird Sings, where we do get to share testimonies and just help to inspire people and give people hope, especially in a time such as this. I'm going to share my story with you guys. Around age 5, I went through child sexual abuse. That was very traumatic for me. It was a close family member that I really loved and cared about. And, every time he would sexually abuse me, he would tell me I couldn't tell. He told me I had to keep this secret. So, I carried this secret inside as long as I could. The longer I kept allowing the abuse and not speaking up about it, again, I was 5 years old. The more I didn't speak about it, the more aggressive the abuse got. And so it got to the point that the abuse, it just became too heavy of a burden for me to bear. And I remember sitting in the kitchen with my mom, and I asked her if I could tell her a secret. Pretty much I wanted to give her the secret and let it go and get it off of me because it was so heavy. And she told me, yeah, you can tell me. So all I got out was 3 words. I said, él me tocó. That means he touched me. And that's all I got out. I never really got a chance to tell my mother the level of the abuse, what he was doing to me during that time, because my mom shut it down. She made phone calls and she blocked all access to this predator. But having been through that leaves a lot of scars. It leaves a lot of trauma. I was 5 years old, and a lot of things happened in my life as I was growing up, as I was an adolescent. There's things that I went through that I didn't realize that a lot of them were related to not really resolving this abuse and dealing with it. So, I was sexually active at an early age. And that was in part to the fact that I was exposed to sex at an early age. So I didn't view sex the way that probably should have been viewed. I viewed it like, okay, what's the big deal? It's normal, right? That also, before I go into the child, I did go through the foster care. I did go through foster care. And I went because when I was a adolescent, my mother and I started having some issues. We were clashing. I was talking back. I was getting fresh. She was in a new relationship and she was in love. And, my parents, I've never seen them together. They ended up having a baby. So, I was jealous. I was now, I was the only girl. It was just me and her. And then, my older brother lived in Costa Rica. So it was really just me and my mom. Then this baby came and this man came, and they used to be in the bed laying down with the baby in the middle, with a little baby boy with all the toys. And I was like, what about me? So all of that also led me to act out and rebel. And I ended up running away. And my mom was not happy about that. She was trying to get order in the house. We were arguing. I was getting loud. I was running away. I knew that I could just do it and she couldn't stop me at this point. So one day I ran away and I was at his house and my mom called the police on me. She called the police on me and she had them come and pick me up. And they came and picked me up and they handcuffed me and put me in the back of the car. And they took me to a facility. And, you know, the police was so nice. They were like, look, we're just gonna put these handcuffs on you just to walk you outside, okay? You know, and I was like, okay. Because they knew I didn't belong in, you know, I didn't belong there. I wasn't that type of kid, you know? So then when I got to the facility, the people there were so nice. The lady was so kind. She's the one that had to stay with me all night. And she was like, why are you here? You know, she even asked me that. And just everyone that I met along that journey was so nice. So I guess I just needed to go through that process just to learn some of the things that happened in the background. So now when I meet people that have been through the foster care system or are currently in the foster care system, I have something to pull out of from my back pocket. Like, wait, I've been here before when I'm talking to the youth, or I'm communicating with somebody who's dealing with some type of trauma from something similar that I've been through. So, you know, I went through that, and then, you know, I got to the point, I said to my mom, can I just come back home? Like, I was ready to behave. And she let me come back home. And so I ended up getting a boyfriend. I was about, yeah, the boyfriend. Oh, okay, that's when I was running away. That was the boyfriend. But I got rid of him. He showed signs of domestic violence. You know, this young guy that I was dating when I was younger, he would wait for me in the bushes and do certain things that were really scary and unhealthy patterns for anybody to be dating that I didn't know was early signs of domestic violence at that time, because I was a little kid. I was 12, he was like 16. Okay. And then around 13, I had another boyfriend. I got rid of this one. This one was very unsafe. And I got a new boyfriend. And I was in love with this boyfriend, and we ended up getting pregnant. Well, my mom at the time was not having it. She was not happy about it. And we decided at the time, I wasn't happy about the decision, but at the time we just went with the abortion. And I had to go and get an abortion. And I was so hurt because I didn't want to. So I would just talk to the baby in my stomach. And I literally was like feeling so guilty, right, that I had to do that. So when I was at the clinic, I had this abortion, 5 months pregnant. And he told me, do you want to see the baby? So it's interesting. My sister before me said this, because this is so bizarre to me that they did this and they showed me this. But they showed me the baby, and the baby was missing limbs and the head and, you know, one arm, one leg. And I just couldn't believe the image of what I was seeing. It was so traumatic. It was very traumatic. And I truly felt so guilty. I could not get out of that feeling of guilt. So I don't know if even when you have an abortion, you probably go through postpartum, because your body was still pregnant and I was a little kid. So my hormones were out of balance. Everything was crazy. And so, you know, I went through this and I wanted my baby back. And so me and my boyfriend immediately started trying for a baby again. And I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 14 years old. I was 14 going on 15. And I dropped out of school. I dropped out in the 8th grade when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. It was about the end of the year when I had dropped out. So, you know, I had my daughter, and, you know, once I had my daughter, I was at the hospital laying in the bed with my daughter in my arms the day she was born. And my neighbor across the street called me. She's looking for my child's father. And I'm like, oh, he's not here. You know, I'll give him the message. And then she called right back and was like, you know, is he there? I'm like, oh my God, is there an emergency? You know, is everything okay? She was like, no, I just want to let you know that I've been messing with your baby daddy. And you know, we're, you know, just want to let you know that, and we're going to be together. And I'm laying there holding the baby. Like, I could have literally spazzed, threw the baby out the window. Anything could have happened. That was so evil and demonic and just nasty and mean. And when she did that to me, I remember my chest got very tight, and I just started crying and crying and crying. And I was just going to, obviously, I started hyperventilating, and I would just go into these long periods of just becoming numb, you know, just feeling very numb, feeling very alone, feeling very abandoned, betrayed, just a lot of different feelings, putting two and two together, times when things didn't add up and things started to, you know, to remember that this lady used to sit with me, look at my ultrasound pictures, come over, call me, talk to me on the phone, hang out with me. I was like, it's a little nasty, little, it was bad, right? And so, you know, I went through that. And, you know, everything as far as when I had my daughter changed for me because I had a purpose. I was really living for my daughter at that particular moment. And because of her, at that moment, she was my why I went back to school. And I said, I need to get my GED. I need to get back to school. I need to get myself together because when I tell her to, I need to be an example and a representation of what I'm opening my mouth to preach to her or to tell her she needs to try to do better. I have to be trying to do better myself. And so I went to night school and I worked in the daytime. And, you know, I took her to daycare. I was a single parent. I walked with her in a car seat. I didn't even have a stroller. It was crazy. I don't know how I was getting around with a car seat. Don't ask me today because I wouldn't do it today. But, you know, I was young, strong, and I guess I was just, you know, moving on. And I just toughened up because I had to. And I grew up overnight and I had to be an adult and put on my big girl panties on and take care of my daughter. And I did the best I could. You know, there were things that I could have done better. And we, you know, we live and we learn, but definitely that's one of the things that happened there. I did not have a very long period of postpartum with her, but I did experience it. And I have 4 children. I did experience it with my last 2 children. It had a big effect on my marriage. When my third child was born, my second son, I really could not get out of that cycle, and it just became a cycle. It was like a big fight. I had a hard time doing laundry. I had a hard time, you know, doing certain things. I caught the pattern, but I didn't know how to get help. And I didn't know what help was out there because the help was not anything that was visible like it is today. Like it's so here and at hand. The worst time was when I had my last son. I went into a real bad depression. And I really, really, really had a hard time getting out of it. And I also was dealing with in-laws I had in-law issues. And so it made it even more difficult because I was fighting battles within fighting my mental health and still trying to be a parent and 4 children, getting 4 different children to 4 different schools and going to school and trying to work in between and manage a home, cook, clean, and do everything else. It gets to be a lot, and it put a lot of pressure on my mental health. And I went through depression. I went through coping through drinking wine. I was like drinking a half a bottle. You know, I was like almost drinking the bottle towards the end because you build a tolerance. And mixing that up with when you're dealing with mental condition or mental health, mental illness, whatever emotion, depression, anxieties that I was dealing with, using alcohols or drugs or anything like that only makes it worse when you're dealing with postpartum depression or any type of depression. But that wasn't helping me. It had me in the bed. It was, you know, I would go out and I was functional. I would go out and do the work and then just come home and just be in the bed, trying to get unstuck. The things that help. Oh, well, we'll talk about the things that help another time. But yeah, so that's some of what I went through. And definitely, you know, I really just found myself feeling very alone. I felt like a zombie when I was in that state of depression. That's the best way I can describe it. A lot of times you see people who cut. I didn't deal with it like that, but I could understand because it's a very numbing place. You know, you feel very alone, and that's pretty much it. So does anybody have any questions, or do we wait till after?
We're going to wait till after. Thank you so much, Nancy. We're going to save all our questions to the end. I believe, thank you so much, Nancy. I believe Teresa is ready now. She's having some computer issues. We all know how technology does with us in life sometimes. So, Miss Teresa, it's your turn.
I'm loving the stories. And for me, it's a lot of different stories that I could tell, but I'm going to start probably at the age of about 20. So, and that for me would have been 25 years ago. Time flies. So at the age of 20, I was dating a young man, and he and I decided to hang out and do, what grown people do. And we started hanging out, and very soon in the relationship, I found out that I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. At that time, I was independent. I was in college. I had my own place, had my own job, always have been a person to take care of myself. Also, I forgot to say, I am a Northern Southern Peach. I'm originally from Baltimore. I call myself a Northern Southern Peach, a B-more girl to the peach. So I got with this little country guy that was nice, and the nice gentleman and all those great things at the time that I believed. We got pregnant, and I got pregnant, and he said, okay, well, let's go and check on the baby, and let's go to this clinic. So we went to the clinic to check on the baby. Unbeknownst to me, it was an abortion clinic as well. And so they checked me out, found out I was pregnant, and they were telling me about abortion. But for me, that was not an option. I believe that I knew what I was doing when I laid down with that young man. And he was like, what? We're going to have this baby? Da, da, da. I was like, yeah, we're going to have it, or whatever God's will is. Let it be done. And so we continued with the pregnancy. And it was really hard because the guy that I dated, he was a very Southern kind of religious guy, which I had no problem with, but he didn't want to tell his mom and his dad that I was pregnant. And I was 20, he was 25, and he had his own stuff. It was very strange to me. And I remember at the time, his younger sister, who was only 2 years younger than me, was 18, and she had gotten pregnant in high school. And so we went to her baby shower down in Southern Georgia, where they're from. And everybody was talking about how my significant other at the time was going to be such a good uncle, and how excited they were. Just imagine, I'm sitting there, I'm pregnant. I can't say anything really because he's ashamed because we're not married. Remember, he didn't want to keep the child, but I decided we were going to keep the child. He had asked me to go ahead and marry him since I was pregnant. And I was like, yeah, I don't know you. I'm not marrying you just because of this baby. I might be young, but not that young. So I got upset at that baby shower, really, really upset, because I was pregnant. We were probably like 2 or 3 months apart, maybe 4 at the most, pregnancy-wise. Well, I continued to work. Like I said, I was a single college student. I was on my own. I had to work. One of the places I worked at was a retail place. And it actually was that one of the places was a grocery store, and one was a retail place. Because when you're in college, you got to figure out your hours around your classes. Also, I was a struggling college student because I had my own apartment, I had everything. So I didn't have a car at this time. And I'm in Metro Atlanta trying to ride MARTA, where it was smarter, and pregnant. And I remember I was at work. It was a grocery store. It's no longer in existence. It's called Cub Foods. And I was picking up, like scanning a thing of dog food because I was a cashier. And I remember feeling some cramps or feeling a little different. I said, let me go to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom and whatever, and everything was fine. When I got off work, I proceeded to walk to the MARTA station. It was in the Lindbergh area, which is kind of like downtown, uptown. And I got on the train, went home to my downtown Decatur apartment. Everything was all good. I have a younger brother that's only about 18 months younger than me. He had just asked me, could he stay at my apartment for about 2 weeks until his new lease opened up? Because if I was in, he was like maybe his first year of college or something. And so him and I were just walking. It was around rent time. Y'all remember, y'all young and you really had to pay rent. So I said, come and walk with me to the office or whatever. I need to drop off my rent in the drop box. And so he was walking with me to the office. We proceeded to go pay that, like put it in there. And then I had some trash to dump in. And I felt myself, I was like, oh, that hurts. I said, what is that? And then I felt another, oh, it hurts. And it just kept hurting. He's like, you all right? I was like, yeah, I'm good. So I said, sometimes this happens, I guess, when you're pregnant, because what, like I know, this is the first time I've been pregnant. I'm young. And needless to say, later on, I found more about the doctor. It really didn't help. As I think Simbi was saying, you don't know, you don't know. And so we go back to my apartment. My aunt is there. My aunt is actually my roommate. My aunt was my roommate. She had just got back from the Peace Corps. And she was like, hey, you want to be roommates? I was like, yes, I'm a college student, half rate, you can pay, half I can pay. Hey. So my aunt has no children. However, she's a therapist. So she was the right person to be there at this time. I went into the bathroom to go to the bathroom and I felt pressure. I just felt like, whoa. And I was like, what is that? So I took a mirror and I looked under and I saw something blue. I said, what is that? It's blue. I need help. So I went and I told my aunt, I said, Aunt Edna, I see some blue. She said, listen, baby, I don't know what it is because I've never been pregnant, but we need to get to the hospital right now. So we went to the hospital. By the way, the boyfriend, he was out of town with his mama and them down in the country celebrating something else at this time. So we went to the hospital and my aunt is very helpful because she's a therapist, but also she's just very loving. And I was in extreme pain. And they said, well, your baby, that was the bag coming out. We're gonna have to take the baby. At this point, I was 5 months pregnant. They gave me whatever medicine was to speed up the pregnancy. I did have to push that baby out. That baby was born. They had a conversation with me. Excuse me 1 minute. They had a conversation with me, letting me know that the baby was not going to survive because it was too young by at least a month for any way. And so at that time, y'all know labor, I was in a lot of pain. And they were like, hey, do you want some more of that medicine? I was like, yes, give me more. My aunt was a drug and alcohol counselor. So she was watching everything they did. And she said, where is that boy? I said, oh, he in the country with his family. And I explained to her then, they don't know I'm pregnant. She said, the blankety blank with that, they're going to know today. And so she called and told him what was going on. And I could hear my aunt being very peaceful and being the woman that she is. And whatever he was saying, it was something about he couldn't come because it was the middle of the night now and he might get hit by a deer. And I heard my aunt say, I don't give a blank where you are and what, dear. And if your mama and daddy don't know, you need to tell them because you're a grown man. She's a grown woman and you got this baby coming. And so he ended up coming back and it took him some while. Meanwhile, I had the baby. He was my only boy that I have ever birthed. And his name was Xavier. The thing about that for me is I never held Xavier because in my mind, I knew if I held Xavier, I would not be the same woman I am today. I know myself. And so by the time my lovely little boyfriend got there, Xavier had passed away. However, they had cleaned him up. He was dressed nicely. He looked just like my boyfriend at the time. And that was Xavier. That was my first child, my first experience. And my boyfriend at the time later on becomes my husband, my first husband. And he took it very hard. He took time off of work. He helped me, he helped nurse me, and he eventually told his parents, but they were very uneducated about miscarriage or any of those things. His mama asked me pretty much what had I done? How should that feel? Fast forward, I married my boyfriend. He becomes my husband at some point. A pretty volatile kind of relationship. No abuse physically at this time. But we try again early in our marriage. Actually, we conceived on our wedding night. And I was pregnant again. And this time, I was like, well, I'm going to ask the doctor more questions because obviously, I didn't know enough. And so I think I was probably about 2 or 3 years later from that. And this time I started asking to get more information about, carrying a child. I got a wonderful OBGYN who is now my OBGYN now. And she said, listen, you have an incompetent cervix. We're going to have to give you a cerclage. You might need to lay down and rest. You're not going to be able to do all you used to do. And so I was like, okay, when can we get that scheduled? She said, we'll get it for next week. It was a Friday night. I went home, my husband and I, we were laying watching ants or some kind of bug story or something. And we went to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt some pain. said, what is that pain? Let me call the doctors right now. So I called. They said, oh, Miss Such and Such, you just have an aggravated uterus or something. I said, okay. They said, put up your feet and rest and relax. I said, okay, I'm gonna put my feet up and rest and relax. I did that for hours. It didn't help. So I decided I'm gonna call the doctor's office. We're going to the doctors as soon as it opens up. I get there and they look and they check. They said, oh, your baby's coming out. Because now I haven't had a chance to go get that cerclage yet. So again, I'm back in the delivery room delivering another 5-month baby. This time I'm a married woman, and that baby came, and of course, because she was not big enough, she was not going to survive either. And her name was Angel. And so again, I never held Angel. However, my boyfriend, husband, whatever he was at the time, he's my husband by then, but he held the baby. He walked around, he talked to the baby, he showed me the baby, he bought me the baby. Very good kind of guy like that. And so I just knew, again, if I hold this baby, I'm gonna want to walk out with this baby. I cannot. And so that was Angel. Fast forward, we decided, like, we were single, living in Atlanta. He works for Delta, I work for the Marriott. We ain't good. We just, if we don't have any children, we're gonna be okay. Da 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 da. Even though really he wanted children even more than I did. Fast forward, find out I'm pregnant a year and a half later. And this time I get the best specialists. I get the best experts that I think I can get. But I still had that same primary care doctor. And that lovely OBGYN that told me I needed a cerclage, she's no longer there anymore. She went to start her own practice, which I found out later. Well, this time though, they put me on bed rest. I'm on bed rest. I had it made. So, and I even got a new job where like my insurance and everything was great. However, when I went to labor, it was a little bit earlier, but it wasn't like preemie early. I called the doctor. He said, okay, go to the hospital. We got to the hospital and they said, okay, she's in labor. They told me, go ahead. We're going to start, giving you the shot to speed up your labor. And they said, okay, the baby's coming, but a nurse said she's breached. They didn't know she was breached, but I was already 9 centimeters dilated almost. So that baby, she came, she had breathing challenges. She ended up having cerebral palsy, various seizures, various disabilities. And her name was Zaria. And she is my reason for Zaria's song. Because she was born, they said she would never eat, walk, and talk. She did. She was 7 years old, unfortunately, and succumbed to a seizure at school and passed away. And so that's why I created Zaria's song, because I've helped thousands of women that have children with special needs or no longer have their children here with us. As a matter of fact, we just had our annual Mother's Day event. That's for mothers that have lost their children or mothers on Mother's Day. Once a mother, always a mother. So Zaria was a beautiful little girl. She was a joy of my world. And then I was about to leave that marriage at this time because that dude was getting on my last nerve, because all he could talk about, you can't do this because you're a mother. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't. And I don't live in that world. So we were getting into things that he also was domestically violent. And I decided I was going to leave that relationship. One day I was walking past the aisle, me and Zaria, she's at this time about 3 before she passed away. And I looked down the women's sanitary aisle. I said, whoops, haven't seen that in a while. And I went to the pharmacy and they said, oh, you want a pregnancy test? I found out I was pregnant. I was so sad. I was depressed, right? And then I ended up having my last child that I had, and her name is Jade. And Jade was a preemie, and her story is, went to get checked at the hospital, and she had the doctor was the neonatal head doctor of the hospital. I wasn't playing this time. So she came early as well. She was a emergency delivery, and she also was a preemie, but she did well. But this particular child, she emotionally was a bit different. She would cry for hours on end. She would throw things. She would bang her crib. She was different. Also, I had a hard time attaching to her or bonding with her, and that was Miss Jade. So as you can see, my story has really been, I had 4 children. I now still have 1 living child that I birthed. I do have 2 beautiful additional children, but it was a story. It was a song. And that's why I created Zaria's Song, because all of those children were a song to who I am and what I believe in helping advocate and help other parents that might have experienced the same. And now I understand years later that I experienced postpartum several times and I had no clue.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And we'll pass it on to our final presenter for the evening, Ms. Andrea Waterstone.
Hi, good evening. I'm honored to be holding the presence of a stage with all of you mothers and your stories. I only have one birthing story. And my story is a thread of my whole life, which has been struggling with mental health and mental illness. My mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so I experienced that as a young child, being a child of a schizophrenic and her being hospitalized. I began suffering from depression at age 14. Once I was in college at 18, got told that I had schizoaffective disorder. Then around 20 was told I had schizophreniform. And then once I was 22 and was graduating from my undergrad, I got diagnosed with bipolar 1. And that is the diagnosis that I have to this day. But there was definitely like the range of the unknowing and the challenges of figuring that out. I've only had, I think, 3 major manic experiences in my life. And I've known most of the time when I've been manic, but the one time I didn't know was postpartum. So leading up to my pregnancy and through my pregnancy, I was very intentional about my care with knowing of my background and knowing of my mental illness. And so I stayed on the medicines that were good for me and like was with my doctors and very intentional. I was 34, but still considered high risk due to staying on the medication. And so scanned more, all the whole, like everything that comes with like a lot of privilege in having resources and access to medicine and access to doctors. It wasn't until my husband lost his job that we realized the stark reality of what being uninsured actually looks like and means. And we ended up having to get an induction just to stay on our insurance. It was denied by the Affordable Care Act for making too little money myself. We were denied by Medicaid for pregnancy for making too much as a household during a year when my husband was laid off. And we were told that we would have to go to the ER to give birth if we tried to roll over to our new insurance. So through an induction, my son was born, and I was very fortunate to have a healthy laboring. Now, there was intentionality before we left the hospital. We had to have a car seat. We had to have a sign off from our pediatrician. There's the whole 9 with that. I ended up not sleeping. So not sleeping is a huge trigger for me. And in total, I ended up not sleeping for 23 days. And on day 10 of not sleeping, my brain shifted. I got into a psychosis. It's called postpartum psychosis. It happens to about 1 in 1,000 women. And I disassociated. I didn't know who I was. I didn't realize I had a child. I didn't understand who my husband was in relation to me. My family was there trying to support me, but I disassociated. And so I was taken to an urgent care. And this is just 10 days after the birth of my son. And I was there doing very like physical things because that was how I was attempting to ground myself. So clapping and touching the earth and touching the walls. And a policeman got out his taser and was about to tase me. And it wasn't if it wasn't for, I believe, my whiteness, as well as a Black nurse stepping in front of me and saying, she is not a threat, she is in psychosis, that I was not tased. And I also believe that part of my privilege was that it wasn't a gun brought out on me, but that it was a taser because I was white. So that was like one of the first spaces in which I feel my whiteness and my privilege like was brought into play. Then we were also told that we could not be cared for there. And so we were sent to an ER. In the ER, I immediately got admitted because I started taking my clothes off. I didn't know where I was still disassociating. The police were like, what are you doing? You need your clothes back on. So I got out of I wasn't waiting. I got directly put into a room and was on like monitored watch. In that space, my husband was there and my father was there. And I knew at that time I was manic. I knew I was manic then. And I knew like the clapping and everything that I was doing was just a representation of that. But I just wanted to sleep. And my brain would not let me sleep and it would not turn off. And it was during that time that I ended up being involuntarily committed to a psychiatric ward. I was put into a state-run facility, which I can assure you is not the place for a new mother, is not the place for a woman, is really not the place for anyone. And that this is the option that we give as a resource for mental health when we are out of resources is a reason why I am doing the work I am doing today, so that no other woman and no other mother has to be in this space. During my psychiatric hospitalization, I didn't believe what was going on. I was awake and aware and like knew I was manic and knew where I was. But I had been breastfeeding and I was given no clothes to change into. I was leaking. I was being told to stop, like my body had control over it. And I was left in the same dirty clothes for days. I was on a mixed ward and wasn't seen for a doctor for 3 days, which is illegal. I also was not on my medication when I was there, which is also the exact opposite of what you would believe would be supportive or helpful or a way to save money for the like state. It just was a way to keep me in there longer and to, I was harassed by wards. I was gaslit. And I continued to not sleep while I was in there. I didn't recognize how intense the trauma would be until years later. But I finally, after over a week, was able to go home. And this was just getting me to a point where I was, quote unquote, manageable and not well by any means. But I was left like the intention of my child having a doctor that he needs to go see, having a car seat. To leave a state-run psychiatric ward, there is no requirement. There is just the, okay, and now good luck. I wasn't pointed to Postpartum Support International. I wasn't like pointed to any resources to navigate mental health. I didn't know about Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies Coalition. I didn't know how to go about healing. And so I spent a year and a half in a space of, honestly, a lot of gray. My experience of raising my child up until almost 2 felt gray and blurry. And I suffered from the postpartum psychosis, but the ending ended up like turning into postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression, which are both very common. It's like 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 who experience those. And I think we owe it to our moms to give them more resources, to provide more access to care, to provide knowledge and background and understanding. And so that each of our stories, so that Nancy's story and Simbi's story and Teresa's story and my story, we're not rare. Our stories are not in its own like container. We are speaking because other women experience this, and there needs to be change, and there needs to be systems around and education around. And I think it's only with our voices being elevated that we find our own ability to speak to the deep lack that exists and the need for change. So I honor all of your stories, and thank you for giving me space to share my own.